Welcome to True Stories from District 6 podcast. I'm Chuck Burnett, the Division A Director, working under the leadership of Troy Ducart, the Public Relations Manager for District 6 this year. And our very first guest today, going into this 4th of July weekend, is Andrei Ghenciu of the Hudson Rise and Shine Toastmasters Club, based, I assume, in Hudson, Wisconsin. Andrei wasted no time in answering the call to appear on our podcast from Troy. Andrei is a relatively recent member of his home club, and I'm interested in learning more about what drew him into Toastmasters and how that experience has been so far. So without any further delay, please welcome Andrei Ghenciu. Good morning. We were talking a little bit before this interview started, and you reminded me that you've done a lot of traveling. You had just returned from Anchorage, Alaska last night. That you must be exhausted.
I am exhausted, but the trip was so worth it. As a matter of fact, I lived in Alaska for 3 years. I visited many summers, and this trip was now 5 years due. Absolutely magnificent place. One of the most beautiful places I've seen in the world.
I'm envious. That's certainly a place that I would like to go to as well. And I have to believe that your journeys there would be good material for future speeches. So I would encourage you to try to develop that into some stories.
Absolutely. There will be several stories about Alaska, and indeed, Alaska is one of the most inspiring places for stories. Great.
As I mentioned, you are a recent new member of Toastmasters. You joined your club, Hudson Rise and Shine Toastmasters Club. Tell me about what led you to join. Tell me about your journey that led you to join Toastmasters in April this year.
Yeah, well, Charles, I think many of us during this pandemic looked at many things that we've done, the ways we've done certain things. And in some sense, we tried to redefine ourselves and looked at ways to invest in ourselves and develop ourselves. And I realized the importance of connecting with others throughout this pandemic. I teach mathematics at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. We had to do this remotely. And I once again understood how critical it is to connect with my students, with others. And stories are the best ways to do that, right? The things that you lived out, your story, nobody can tell your story better than yourself. And then Toastmasters was and is one of the best platforms to grow into a storyteller, right? And it took only a few meetings at the Hudson Rise and Shine Club to realize what a great platform this is. So it was an easy decision for me. I want to tell my story. I want my story to have an impact. Toastmasters is one of the best places to develop that.
Wow, that's great. You know, it strikes me that you, like others that joined in this past year, started off experiencing Toastmasters in a different way than those of us that started off knowing Toastmasters as an in-person event, that we meet at a room somewhere, we stand in front of people, we greet people, we actually shake their hands when we leave the podium. Your very first experience in Toastmasters has been in a virtual way. I'm assuming that's probably going to change over the coming year, but how has that been? How has that experience been, entering in the world of Toastmasters with online meetings?
The fact that I taught online several months prior to that certainly helped. So I knew kind of what I needed to expect. I still think that in-person is the best way to communicate and connect. I still prefer looking in the person eye when I tell the story. But Toastmaster makes the best of it. And they were so welcoming, and I think they understood that they need to take even more steps. I would imagine that in person they are extremely welcoming, but in the Hudson Club made everything so that I felt extremely welcome, even in this setting.
That's great. I'm curious. You teach at Stout, and you joined a club that's in Hudson. Is there a great distance there, or?
It's a 45-minute drive.
Okay.
When I joined the club, I actually lived in River Falls, Wisconsin, which is 20 minutes away from Hudson. And at the time, it was the closest club to River Falls. Right now, probably there's another club that's, I'd say, about 30, 35 minutes away, but this club is home. So they already made me feel so welcome. This is home, and I will take the 45-minute drive. It's a 7 a.m. meeting, but
Okay.
I will just get in back in time for my 9 a.m. classes and usual days. So that's home.
Well, great. So, well, now the time is no problem. I mean, you can do it online, but eventually when you start returning, it's not that bad of a drive then. So
Right.
I'm so happy you found a great club. Tell me about your club. Every club has its own unique personality, so to speak. Is there anything that kind of stands out about the Hudson Rise and Shine Toastmaster Club?
So what I liked about them in particular, and I realized this from the very first meeting, and this is where this online setting actually helped, that they had members that used to be members of the club, moved elsewhere, and as soon as they had the possibility to do this online, they came back to the club. So that speaks volume about this particular club, because we had somebody from Kentucky that had moved 5 years to Kentucky, and when she realized that she can join online, she did that. They were extremely helpful right away in terms of mentoring, and as soon as I decided to join, somebody walked me through the steps right away. So they made sure everything is clear. Every time I have a question, I can talk to somebody. So those are just the two things that stand out, and they're very good on keeping the agenda. The meetings are always interesting and entertaining, and every now and then we are asked questions, as you very well know. So you don't know what to expect. It's interesting, spontaneous, and so great experiences.
Well, that's great. I'm so happy to hear that. So one thing that I think Toastmasters does a really good job is mentoring, getting people up to speed. You know,
Indeed.
I've been the recipient of that process, as well as giving back as a mentor. So I think it's something that really speaks well for Toastmasters. I'm just curious, have you picked a path yet in Pathways?
So it's the leadership path.
Okay.
And that's something that I've always had an interest in. So my PhD is in mathematics, but at the same time, I have a master's in political science. As soon as we defeated communism in Romania, I was 14 years old, and I had so much interest in the world, in politics, in policies in general. I almost felt like it was a duty for me to learn more about political science, about the world. So I have a master's, and I always wanted to do more, to be an excellent math teacher, and to do more, to remind everybody about the times I lived, and to help change the world, and make sure the values I believe in are implemented elsewhere.
So the path that you picked, leadership, in a way, it really ties in with your goals then, in being able to communicate about that experience. I think
Absolutely.
One of the things I really love about Toastmasters is it particularly when we're now part of an online environment, it allows members to be joining from way outside of our district, or even in other states, other countries. And more than ever, we are able to get exposure to people with different backgrounds like yourself. It just makes it so much more interesting. And Toastmasters is a global organization, and this just more than ever allows us to be tied into all of those unique persons that have joined us. I was interested.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you kind of touched upon your background, and and your PhD in mathematics. I was just kind of wondering about some of your other interests and how they intersect with Toastmasters. If you could just talk about
So
that.
I will just say a few words, and many around the world are a little fascinated about how well we do in math. People from Eastern Europe and the former communist bloc countries, if you want. And in a major part is because the communists at the time realized that there are very few disciplines that won't interfere with their ideology. So it was perfectly fine for them to say, you can do as much as you want, as much math as you want, because it doesn't interfere with our ideology. So we grew up doing a ton of math, playing soccer. That was our way to, to survive in a way.
Okay.
But so those are the basic interests that I had growing up as a child. And then travel, for me, was something that I thought may not happen for the rest of my life. I really thought communism was invincible. And as soon as I had this opportunity, traveling and experience different cultures, the world in general, diversity, these are interests, lifelong interests. And as you said, nowadays, and I hope we'll be able to keep this hybrid format where we have our in-person meetings, but others being able to join online, so that we really do have a very diverse group of people joining these meetings. So these are some of the interests, and in general, history and how the countries in the former communist bloc experienced post-communist decades, and how my home country now has joined European Union and NATO. So these whole developments are fascinating, and every time I have the opportunity to share some of these things, I take on that opportunity.
Well, Andrei, you have such a fascinating life story, in addition to your travels and the travels that to Alaska, which you just came back from. I think there's so much material for some great speeches, and I really look forward to the day that I can actually meet you in person at some event.
Same here. I would absolutely love that. And you are absolutely right. It's there's so much that I can share about Alaska. There's so much that I want to share about my home country, about communism and the things that the mistakes that we want to avoid. And we all know, being members of Toastmasters, that every time we want to make a point, it's so important that we have a story. Every time you tell a story, you want to make a point, and every time you make a point, you want to tell a story. So it's absolutely critical indeed.
Well, great. Well, Andrei, as you know, we're just starting off this new Toastmaster year. We got a full year ahead of us. I certainly wish you the very best. I wish your club, Hudson Rise and Shine Toastmasters, the very best in this year. I hope all of you have a successful year. I thought it would be great if we could end on a message. If you would like to speak to other members of District 6 and encourage them in their Toastmaster journey, what would you say to everyone?
I would say, continuing from that idea that every time you want to make a point, you want to have a story, I would reiterate that nobody can tell your story better than you. It's what you lived out. It's the authenticity is there. If you want to make an impact, if you want to connect with others, I think Toastmasters is a wonderful platform. And now I'm experiencing this. It's such a diverse group of people. It's simply a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And it's a wonderful opportunity for professional development and personal growth. So I can only speak volumes about this chance that I'm having.
Well, thank you, Andrei. That is just a great message to all of us. Well, with that, I wish you a great rest of the day. And again, I hope we can meet sometime.
Same here, Charles. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.